Stand in Times Square tonight, and you'll be surrounded by 330,000 people moving through a single intersection. But rewind 400 years, and you'd find dense forest, salt marshes, and a deep natural harbour where the Hudson River meets the Atlantic. A place inhabited by the Lenape people for thousands of years. No streets, no skyline, no empire. Just water, woods, and wind. What happened in between? Trade, war, fire, revolution, plague, fortune, collapse, reinvention. A muddy Dutch trading post that became the capital of the modern world. A city that faced destruction again and again, yet rebuilt itself over and over. Through wars and economic crises and waves of immigration. New York kept growing, kept reinventing itself, kept pulling people in from everywhere on Earth. No matter how many times it fell, it always got back up. For centuries, we've had to imagine what those earlier versions of New York actually looked like. Faded paintings, yellowed maps, newspaper engravings, black and white photographs. But now, using AI trained on historical imagery, we can take those original drawings and photographs and see them as they might have appeared in real life. The wooden wharves, the horse-drawn carriages, the smoke rising from tenement chimneys, the skyline rising decade by decade. You're about to witness 400 years of history in one video. Sit back and relax as we journey through the incredible history of the greatest city in the world. Let's go back to where it all began. The year is 1609. An English explorer named Henry Hudson, working for the Dutch East India Company, sails into a vast natural harbour at the mouth of a wide river. He's looking for a passage to Asia. He doesn't find one, but he finds something else. A protected deep-water port, surrounded by forested islands, perfectly positioned for trade. The Lenape people have lived here for at least 5,000 years, fishing the rivers, hunting the woods, planting maize and beans. Hudson's crew trades with them, exchanges a few goods, then sails away. But the Dutch remember. By 1624, the Dutch West India Company sends 30 families to settle in the area. They build a small fort on the southern tip of an island the Lenape call Mannahatta, Hilly Island. They name their colony New Amsterdam. The next year, the Dutch Director General, Peter Minuit, supposedly purchases the entire island from the Lenape for goods worth 60 guilders. The Lenape almost certainly didn't understand it as a permanent sale. They didn't believe land could be owned that way. The misunderstanding will echo for centuries. New Amsterdam grows slowly at first. Wooden houses, a windmill, a church, cattle grazing on what's now Wall Street, pigs running loose in the muddy lanes. By 1640, only about 400 people live there. But it's already different from other colonies in the New World. The Dutch are traders, not settlers. They welcome anyone who can do business. By the 1640s, 18 different languages are spoken in the streets. Africans, both enslaved and free. Jews fleeing the Inquisition in Brazil. French Huguenots escaping religious persecution. English Puritans. Germans. Scandinavians. The seed of what New York will become is already planted in those muddy streets. In 1647, a peg-legged former soldier named Peter Stuyvesant arrives as the new Director General. He's strict, religious, and authoritarian. He bans drinking on Sundays. He cracks down on Quakers. He tries to expel the Jews. The Dutch West India Company overrules him. Stuyvesant wants order. He builds a wooden defensive wall along the northern edge of the settlement to keep out the English and the Lenape. That wall gives a future street its name, Wall Street. But the wall doesn't save them. In August 1664, 4 English warships sail into the harbour. They demand surrender. Stuyvesant wants to fight, but the citizens refuse. They don't want to sacrifice themselves for the Dutch West India Company. They've seen no profit from his rule. New Amsterdam surrenders without a single shot being fired. The English rename it after the Duke of York, the King's brother. New York is born. Under English rule, the city keeps growing. By 1700, the population reaches 5,000. Trade booms. Sugar from the Caribbean, tobacco from Virginia, manufactured goods from England, furs from upriver. And another trade, a darker one. New York becomes one of the most important slave trading ports in the northern colonies. By 1740, nearly 1 in 5 New Yorkers is enslaved. The wealth of the early city is built, in part, on their labour and their suffering. In 1741, panic sweeps the city. A series of fires breaks out across Manhattan. Authorities, terrified of a slave uprising, conduct mass arrests. 13 black men met a tragic end in public executions. 17 more faced the same fate. The truth of what really happened remains contested. The Hysteria reveals just how brittle and frightened the early colonial city really is. The 18th century brings prosperity, then revolution. By the 1760s, tensions between the American colonies and Britain are boiling. New York is divided. Many merchants depend on British trade. Others want independence. When the Revolutionary War breaks out in 1775, the city becomes a battleground. In August 1776, British forces under General Howe land 32,000 troops on Long Island. The largest amphibious invasion in history until D-Day nearly 2 centuries later. George Washington's army is outnumbered, outmaneuvered, nearly destroyed. They escape across the East River in a desperate nighttime evacuation, hidden by fog. New York falls to the British. Just days later, fire breaks out. A quarter of the city is destroyed. Nobody knows for certain who started it. The British blame American spies. The Americans blame British soldiers. Whatever the cause, hundreds of buildings are lost, and thousands of people are left homeless on the eve of winter. The British hold New York for the entire war, 7 long years. Patriot prisoners are kept in rotting ships in the harbour, where over 11,000 perish from disease and starvation. More Americans lost their lives on those prison ships than in all the battles of the Revolution combined. Their remains still wash up sometimes on the Brooklyn shoreline, even today. When the British finally evacuate in November 1783, Washington rides triumphantly into the city. Cheering crowds line Broadway. The British flag is hauled down from the battery, but a sailor named John Van Arsdale famously climbs the greased flagpole to raise the Stars and Stripes. 6 years later, on April 30th, 1789, Washington stands on the balcony of Federal Hall on Wall Street and takes the oath of office as the first President of the United States.
Execute the office of President of the United States. So help me God.
For 1 year, New York is the capital of the new nation. Then in 1790, the capital moves to Philadelphia, and eventually to Washington. New York loses its political crown, but it's about to gain something far more important. The 19th century is when New York becomes New York. In 1811, city planners draw up a grid. Numbered streets running east-west, numbered avenues running north-south, all the way up Manhattan. It's brutal, geometric, unromantic. It flattens hills, fills swamps, ignores the natural landscape entirely. Hills are dynamited. Streams are buried. But it makes the city legible, predictable, buildable. The grid will define New York forever. Then comes the Erie Canal. Opened in 1825 after 8 years of construction, the canal connects the Great Lakes to the Hudson River. Suddenly, goods from the entire American Midwest can flow through New York Harbor to the world. The cost of shipping grain drops by 95%. Wheat from Ohio, lumber from Michigan, iron from Pennsylvania, all flow through New York. The city becomes the gateway to a continent. By 1830, the population reaches 200,000. By 1850, over 500,000. By 1860, 800,000. New York surpasses Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore. It becomes the largest, richest, most chaotic city in America. And the immigrants are pouring in.
Grandfather, we made it.
Aye, child. A new life awaits.
Mama, over here.
In the 1840s, Ireland is starving. The potato famine takes 1 million lives and forces another 1 million to flee. Most come to New York. By 1855, a quarter of the city is Irish-born. They crowd into lower Manhattan tenements. They take the hardest jobs, building canals and laying railroads. They face open hatred. Signs in shop windows read, "No Irish need apply."
This is wrong.
Gangs form along ethnic lines.
Keep moving. Eyes open.
Then come the Germans. Fleeing failed revolutions in 1848, they settle in what becomes known as Klein Deutschland, Little Germany, on the Lower East Side.
Stay close.
then Italians fleeing poverty in the south, then Jews fleeing pogroms in Russia and Eastern Europe.
Careful, don't fall.
The city can't keep up. The 5 Points neighborhood becomes the most notorious slum in America. Disease spreads through tenements where families share single rooms with no ventilation. Cholera epidemics take thousands of lives in 1832, again in 1849, again in 1866. Typhus, tuberculosis, organized groups rule the streets. The Bowery Boys, the Dead Rabbits, the Plug Uglies, violent confrontations in the alleys. Charles Dickens visits in 1842 and writes that 5 Points is the worst slum he has ever seen, worse than anything in London. In July 1863, the city explodes. The Civil War is raging. President Lincoln has imposed a draft, but wealthy men can buy their way out for $300, more than a worker earns in a year.
It is done, sir.
The poor, especially the Irish, see it as a conflict of the rich. Resentment boils over. For 4 days, civil unrest sweeps through Manhattan. Protesters target draft offices and wealthy neighborhoods. The violence turns on black New Yorkers, who are blamed for the conflict.
Hold my hand tight, sweethearts.
Tragic targeted attacks occur throughout the city. The colored orphan asylum is set ablaze while the children inside barely escape.
Stay close now, children. We're almost
At least
safe.
119 people lose their lives,
Just a bit further.
possibly many more. Federal troops finally restore order, fresh from the battlefield at Gettysburg. It's the worst civil disturbance in American history. But the city doesn't stop. It can't stop. Money is pouring in. Wall Street is becoming the financial capital of America.
Risks are too high.
Corruption
We need
flourishes.
more assurances.
William Tweed, Boss Tweed, runs Tammany Hall, the Democratic political machine, and takes possibly $200 million from city coffers, billions in today's money.
Let not hesitation cloud our judgment.
He bribes judges.
The seal is unbroken.
He buys
The instructions
elections.
are clear. The gold is
He pads contracts. He's finally exposed by Harper's Weekly cartoonist Thomas Nast, arrested in 1871 and passes away in jail. In 1883, the Brooklyn Bridge opens. Designed by John Roebling, who passes before construction begins, then completed by his son Washington and his daughter-in-law Emily after Washington is paralyzed by decompression sickness. The bridge is the longest suspension bridge in the world. Steel cables arching across the East River, a symbol of human ambition, of engineering, of America itself. On opening day, 150,000 people walk across it. 3 years later, in 1886, a copper statue arrives in pieces from France. Lady Liberty. She's assembled on a small island in the harbour. From her torch, immigrants on incoming ships catch their first glimpse of the new world.
Look at all the birds.
A new life.
The poet Emma Lazarus writes the words inscribed at her base. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. Between 1892 and 1954, over 12 million immigrants passed through Ellis Island, just yards from Liberty's pedestal. They are inspected,
Doctor, please tell us.
processed,
Deeply for me.
sometimes turned away for disease
doctor,
or
please, as you
disability.
Breathe. The lungs sound
Most
clear.
go on to build
Thank God,
new
we were
lives.
so worried.
Italian,
Here, best in the city.
Careful
Polish,
with those, they're ripe.
Russian,
Fans, good prices.
Greek, Chinese, Hungarian, Armenian. Every wave reshapes the city. By 1900, New York has 3.4 million people. The 5 boroughs are officially consolidated in 1898, joining Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens, the Bronx, and Staten Island into a single city. Almost overnight, New York becomes the second largest city in the world, behind only London. Skyscrapers are beginning to rise.
Keep it steady, man. Almost there.
Steel-frame construction, invented in Chicago, transforms what's possible. The Flatiron Building goes up in 1902, the Singer Building in 1908, the Woolworth Building in 1913, briefly the tallest in the world, called the Cathedral of Commerce. The city is reaching for the sky, but the streets below are still dangerous. On March 25, 1911, a fire breaks out at the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory near Washington Square. The doors are locked to prevent workers from taking unauthorized breaks. 146 garment workers, mostly young immigrant women, perish. Many leap from the 8th and 9th floors rather than face the flames.
The fires, they're spreading.
Witnesses on the streets
We
below
must do
watch
something.
in helpless horror.
Too late.
The tragedy sparks change.
Brothers and sisters, we demand
Labour laws, building codes, fire safety.
we will win.
The American labor movement is reborn in those flames.
Rise up, workers.
The subways open in 1904. The first line runs from City Hall to 145th Street in Harlem. Within decades, the system will sprawl into hundreds of miles of underground rail, the arteries of the city. New York moves underground. The 1920s arrive, and New York roars. Prohibition is the law from 1920, but everyone drinks anyway. Speakeasies open by the thousands, hidden behind unmarked doors and password-protected entrances.
This band is divine. Cheers to that.
Jazz pours out of Harlem clubs. The Cotton Club, the Savoy Ballroom,
Enjoy the evening.
Connie's Inn, Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, Bessie Smith. Black artists,
We forge the soul of a people.
writers,
Yes, the rhythm of our words.
It is a
and
living
musicians
tapestry,
create the
a
Harlem
legacy for the
Renaissance,
Let it be heard.
a cultural explosion that reshapes
Powerful
American
evocation,
art
my friend.
forever.
Indeed. It stirs the soul.
Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, James Weldon Johnson. Money flows. Stocks soar. Speculation runs wild. Ordinary people
Record
borrow
price
on
again.
margin to buy shares.
Investments are soaring.
Everyone's
Fortunes are
buying. This is
made
history.
overnight.
press. Get your copy. Give me 2. It's a boom.
Then, on October 29th, 1929, the music stops. Black Tuesday. The stock market collapses. Fortunes vanish in hours. The Great Depression begins. By 1932, a quarter of New Yorkers are unemployed. Soup kitchens stretch around blocks. Shantytowns called Hoovervilles spring up in Central Park, where the reservoir used to be. Families lose everything. Some lose hope. Desperate acts on Wall Street become common enough that they become a grim reality. But even now, the city builds. In 1930, the Chrysler Building tops out at 1,046 feet, briefly the tallest in the world, with its gleaming Art Deco crown. A year later, the Empire State Building rises to 1,250 feet, taking the title. Built in just 410 days during the worst economic crisis in American history, King Kong climbs it in 1933. The skyline that defines New York for the next 70 years takes shape during its darkest decade. Mayor Fiorello LaGuardia, elected in 1934, transforms the city. He fights corruption. He builds public housing, parks, bridges, tunnels, airports. Working with master builder Robert Moses, who will reshape New York more than any single person, LaGuardia drags the city into the modern age.
Create a graceful taper. This design will dominate the skyline for
Moses
generations.
is brilliant
These plans will guide
and
us.
ruthless.
Our legacy to the city.
Over 4 decades, he builds 13 bridges, 416 miles of parkway, 658 playgrounds, the Triborough Bridge, the Brooklyn-Queens Expressway, Lincoln Center, and Jones Beach. He also demolishes entire neighborhoods, mostly poor, mostly black and Latino. The South Bronx is drastically altered by his Cross-Bronx Expressway. Communities that had stood for generations vanish in months. Tens of thousands of families are displaced, many never finding stable housing again. His vision is grand. His cost is human. World War II saves the economy. New York's harbour becomes the most important port in the world. Over 3 million troops sail to Europe from its docks. Factories run around the clock. The Brooklyn Navy Yard alone employs 70,000 workers building battleships and destroyers. The city emerges from the war as the unrivaled capital of the new American century. The post-war boom transforms everything. Television networks set up headquarters in Midtown, with NBC at Rockefeller Center and CBS on West 52nd Street. Madison Avenue invents modern advertising.
Agreed, but visuals must align. Look at
Wall
this.
Street powers
The
global
storyboard's on. Pass it
finance.
here. Revise the headline now. On it, this could win.
The United Nations chooses New York as its home, with construction of its iconic headquarters completed in 1952. New York becomes, officially, the capital of the world. Levittown rises on Long Island, the prototype suburb. Returning GIs and their families flood into the new tract houses. The American dream is being redefined, and increasingly It isn't in the city. But by the 1960s, the city is fraying. The middle class is leaving. White flight to the suburbs accelerates.
Careful with that one, dear.
I don't want to leave.
I know, sweetie. New adventures.
All set.
Manufacturing jobs disappear overseas or to the south. Tax revenue plummets. Street safety deteriorates. By the early 1970s, New York is in financial crisis. Literally. In 1975, the city nearly declares bankruptcy. Mayor Abraham Beame begs the federal government for help.
The city faces a grave crisis.
President Ford initially refuses.
This requires
The Daily News headline is one of the most famous in journalism history. Ford to city, drop dead. A bailout finally comes. But New York is wounded. The 1970s become the city's lowest point. Times Square becomes an area of serious concerns. The subway is covered in graffiti. Unsafe. Broken. Cars are routinely broken into. Violent incidents pass 1,500 a year. Entire neighborhoods experience devastating fires. The South Bronx looks like a disaster zone.
Stay close, we can't stop now.
Blocks of charred ruins, abandoned by landlords for the insurance money. In July 1977, a 25-hour blackout hits the city. Property damage and civil disorder erupt across all 5 boroughs. Over 1,600 stores damaged. More than 3,700 people arrested. The city feels ungovernable. That same summer, a criminal calling himself Son of Sam creates fear throughout the boroughs, attacking young couples in parked cars.
Careful with that
The
one, honey.
anxiety is real.
Do we have to leave?
The exodus accelerates.
Come on, kiddo. Time to go.
But out of the chaos comes culture. Hip-hop is born in the South Bronx in 1973 at a back-to-school party hosted by DJ Kool Herc. Punk explodes out of CBGB on the Bowery with the Ramones, Blondie and Talking Heads. Disco rules Studio 54.
The energy is
Graffiti
incredible.
becomes art.
Your work is
Jean-Michel
inspiring
Basquiat,
everyone.
Keith
Let's
Haring.
keep this vibe going.
Rap, breakdancing, the downtown art scene, Andy Warhol's factory. Even at its lowest, New York invents the future and exports it to the world. The 1980s bring Wall Street back with a vengeance. Ambition becomes glamour. Skyscrapers rise. Young professionals pour into newly renovated lofts in Soho and Tribeca, neighbourhoods that had been industrial wastelands a decade earlier. The AIDS crisis devastates the gay community in Greenwich Village and Chelsea. Thousands lose their lives in indifferent silence. As the federal government looks away, substance abuse issues ravage working-class neighbourhoods. Violent incidents peak in 1990 at over 2,200 a year. That's 6 every single day. Then something changes. Through the 1990s, under mayors David Dinkins and Rudy Giuliani, street safety begins to improve dramatically. The reasons are
Suspect's
debated.
last ping was on 8th
Better
Avenue.
policing,
Cross-reference with the traffic
demographic
cameras.
shifts,
Check the perimeter
the
units
end
on
of
the map.
certain epidemics,
Got it. Notifying dispatch.
CompStat data tracking.
Fifth Avenue. I'll radio the units.
Whatever the cause, New York becomes one of the safest large cities in America. Times Square is cleaned up. Tourists return. The economy roars again. By 2000, the city has rebounded. Population over 8 million. The dot-com boom lifts everything. Then comes September 11th, 2001. At 8:46 in the morning, a hijacked airliner struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. 17 minutes later, a second plane struck the South Tower. By 10:28 a.m., both towers had collapsed. 2,753 people lost their lives in New York that day. The city stops. The skyline is changed forever. Smoke hangs over Lower Manhattan for weeks. Firefighters and rescue workers dig through the rubble of what becomes known as Ground Zero.
Got movement. Checking.
343 New York firefighters are among those who perished. The worst loss in the FDNY's history. Thousands more will face serious health consequences in the years to come from the toxic dust.
We will always remember.
Never forget.
But within days, the city begins to come back. New Yorkers refuse to be defeated. Within a year, downtown is rebuilding. The new One World Trade Center will rise to 1,776 feet. Opened in 2014, the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere. The 9/11 Memorial, two reflecting pools in the footprints of the lost towers, opens to the public. The 21st century brings new challenges. The 2008 financial crisis tests Wall Street again. Lehman Brothers collapses. The economy teeters on the edge. Hurricane Sandy floods the subways and Lower Manhattan in 2012, taking 43 lives and causing $19 billion in damage. Gentrification reshapes neighborhoods. Brooklyn becomes the most expensive borough in America by some measures. Unimaginable a generation earlier. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic strikes harder than anywhere in America. New York is the global epicenter.
Another long shift.
At its peak,
We have to keep
hundreds
going.
pass away every day.
Stay safe, everyone.
Refrigerated trucks line up outside hospitals. Times Square stands empty for the first time in living memory. Broadway goes dark for over a year. But again, the city does what it has always done. It comes back. Today, New York is home to over 8 million people, speaking nearly 800 languages. It remains the financial, cultural, and media capital of the world. Wall Street still moves global markets. Broadway still sells out. the Statue of Liberty still raises her torch over the harbour. The skyline still glows at night, visible for 50 miles in every direction. 400 years after a Dutch trading post took root on the southern tip of Mannahatta, New York remains what it has always been. A city of immigrants. A city of money. A city of art. A city of disasters and rebirths. A city that never finishes becoming itself. If you enjoyed this journey through the incredible history of New York City, be sure to like, subscribe, and join us for more unforgettable stories from history. The past has many more secrets to uncover. Thanks for watching.